Oh, lovely. We're live. All right. Now I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to check this, and then I'm going to check that, and then I'm going to do a sound test. Sweet. And then we're going to go. I'm going to press the buttons. Let's see. I press this button.
Recording in progress.
Awesome. Then I press this button. Yeah. And now we're going to go.
It's a trap! The evil genius.
Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time.
I have not begun to project my anger onto you.
Okay, terrific.
Oh, hello. Wow. Fancy meeting you here. Have you been here long? Are you as slowly melting to death as I am, like a candle in a small church? It is, I should point this out, it is miserably hot in here. So if I sound grumpy, it's because it's like real hot in here. But here we are all the same. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I genuinely appreciate you and your attendance. Also, happy birthday, Mom. It's my mom's birthday, everybody. Just, it's my mom's birthday. It's going to be nice. She had lobster for dinner. She was very excited about that. And now I'm here. Isn't that lovely? Yeah. Well, yes, I will pass on all of your very glad wishes just for that. So, let's do this, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, writers, makers, doers, dreamers, thinkers, collaborators, sex workers, dancers, biblical enthusiasts, non-biblical enthusiasts, anybody who owns a pair of toenail clippers, anybody who understands what an aglet is, those people who have an interest in being interested in things, anybody who's ever seen a bar of soap, pigeons, anybody who enjoys nachos, anybody who understands the sheer magic joy of green onions, people who like bacon grease, people who don't like bacon grease, people who understand that every once in a while you do need to eat something and drink some water. And, of course, most importantly, the comrades. Welcome to the Writers' Chat for September the 8th, 2021. And through no fault of my own, I continue to be John Adamus, the writer next door. And it is delightful to be back in your ears one more time. If this is the first time you're hearing this, if this is the first time you're checking this out, thank you. I genuinely appreciate you being here. It really means so much to me. And after a few shaky weeks of loads of stuff going on, I'm very happy to be back and doing this more consistently. So really, here's what we do here. Since the last time we spoke, which is I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, it's all the days blend together, don't they? Since the last time we spoke, I have wrangled a dozen questions from all manner of social media, from people asking me, DMing me, emailing me, just straight out tweeting me, or just asking me in general, as well as answering the people, the questions from those people in chat. Chat, by the way, Zoom, say hey to Twitch. Twitch, say hey to Zoom. And YouTube, you're going to get this after the fact. And we all say hi to you sort of in the future. No, we'll be from the past. You'll be in the future, but we'll say hi to you after the fact. Hi, guys. Shall we just begin? I think we should just begin. I think we should just begin. All right, so let's hit question number 1. Oh, man. So last week, it got spicy. Last week, we got real spicy. Last week, it was a 4-alarm fire. 5-alarm fire? Whichever one's the real hot one. Here we go. So now we're going to follow up because question number 1 is say more about what you said last week that the hashtag writing community, see, I put it in color this time, you guys, that the hashtag writing community doesn't want people to succeed. And why are my two questions bleeding together? That's embarrassing. So let's just pretend we didn't see the back half of that question because, you know, I'm so clever. Why doesn't the hashtag writing community want people to succeed? Yeah, okay, here we go. We're swinging for the fences. Well, one, just structurally, it's a hashtag. It's not a person. It doesn't give a shit about any of you. It doesn't. It's not going to. It's not about to. It's not a real community. It's a hashtag. A real community would have people, would have first names, would have mutual aid, would have support, would have a combination of events. It wouldn't just be, you know, sort of passive playfulness. It would actually be education. It would actually be real legit support. It wouldn't just be a constant stream of one thing or another, and it would be varied and it would be difficult, and we'd all have to learn to have how to have boundaries, and you want the bell. Linus is in the other room because there's a, you know, it's like, you know, 1,000,000 degrees in here, so I'll ring the bell myself. There you go. You know, a real community, you'd have to learn to have boundaries and have actual disagreements with people, and then you'd have to be an adult and, like, express your feelings and share your feelings and then be okay with somebody else sharing your feelings, and none of that shit happens because it's just a hashtag. But beyond that, let's suppose for a minute that you're going to say, but John, it's more than a hashtag. Fine. Okay, you're right. It's more than a hashtag. Great. So there is some small segment of this population, some group of people, probably your friends, probably the people you know most immediately around you, to whom are going to, it is misspelled. There's a commonality? There's an extra N in there? Yeah, because, you know, writers are great, you guys. They don't need editors, but that's a different question. We're going to come to that. So your immediate circle, your friends, the people who are most excited for you, the ones you talk to the most, the ones that seem like they're the only ones in the writing community because you talk to them all the time, they want you to succeed. Some of them do because they're your friends. And they want you to do well because they're your friends, and that's what friends do. And that is a very, 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 very small drop in the bucket compared to the vast number of human beings on the planet who possibly use that hashtag or check it out or click on it or make a column in some browser or do whatever with it. But there's going to be some segment of the population that does legit want you to succeed. And it's going to seem, because of the way social media works and because of the way we all build echo chambers to support ourselves work, it's going to seem like that means everybody. But really, if we were just to straight count it off on our fingers, it's what? Half dozen, maybe a dozen people tops, compared to how many billions of humans are on the planet? But yeah, there's some people who actually want you to succeed. But there's a different group. And it's a little bit larger. It's almost like we're working out of expanding concentric circles. Because this next group are people who want you to succeed, but only so much. Sure, you can have a book publication birthday, whatever, you know, shitty, lame thing you want to call it. You can totally do that. Totally take your spotlight. Totally just do that, but not too much. Not too much, because then this other person, I'm going to have to sit there and reconcile the fact that you're doing better than me. That, oh my God, you're doing it. And you maybe started later than I did. What does that say about me? Your success. What does your success say about me? So I want you to succeed, but not like a lot, because I don't want to feel threatened. I don't want to feel bothered. I don't want to be embarrassed or have to like reconcile the fact that maybe I need to get more help than I'm allowing myself to get, or maybe, you know, there's some extra factors in the way, or maybe there's something else I should be doing to better improve myself. So for now, I want you to succeed, but, you know, kind of like stay over there and don't, you know, just don't make too much of don't make too much noise. Third group, a little bit bigger still. These are people who might genuinely want you to succeed, but they're doing it for selfish purposes. Now, these are going to be people who are like, yeah, go ahead, succeed, good for you. And then when it's my turn, I'm going to go bigger. I'm going to do better than you. Go ahead, set the bar for me. These are the people with whom you enter into all different kinds of invisible competition. They're the ones who just can't let people be okay. They got to like measure themselves against that. Oh, it's, you know, they published a book. Great. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to publish 2. I'm gonna get 10,000 people. I'm gonna do this. And the numbers are always inflated, right? They're always like ridiculously huge. They're these big, giant, massive things that are just with no planning and no support, with no strategy, no expertise, no practice, no setup, no nothing. They're just gonna walk in one day and go bang, zoom, 10,000 people. And that's not it. But they need you to succeed, so they can either tell themselves, well, that's my benchmark. I have to do at least this well. Or, more than likely, that's the level I have to succeed. That's the level I have to exceed, go past. Because I'm better than you. I have to be better than you. I work harder than you. Because have you seen you? I'm way better. That underlying egoic core sucks. Sucks hard. Sucks big. Sucks awful. It's the worst. It's where we get all our toxic shit. Because we just can't let people do well. We always have to use it to measure ourselves because, well, capitalism, white supremacy, sexism, racism, ableism, any other power dynamic I can think of is predicated on the idea that we have to place people into hierarchies. We have to place people into little groups and little categories so that we can figure out what the hell's going on, so that we know how we're supposed to feel. And yeah, that's a thing. And it sucks. It sucks a lot. It sucks super much. And I would really encourage you to grab your hammers, comrades, and not engage in any of these practices and platforms. But hey, the revolution is an act in progress. So we got to deal with it a little bit. Then there's this other group. It's the biggest one of all. It is, in fact, so big, you probably haven't thought twice about it. Because this group is so big, in fact, that you can succeed all you want, and they're never going to notice. They're the people who don't know you. They're not opposed to your success, but it just doesn't do anything for them. Fine, good for you for succeeding. I don't know you. Great. It's think about it this way. This is the example I would tell somebody if we were just hanging out talking. Right now, you and I are communicating, right? I'm speaking, you're listening. Somewhere on the planet, somebody else right now is eating something. Somewhere. Just by the math of it, somebody somewhere is putting food in their face. Now, our conversation right now does not impact that person eating whatever they're eating. I am hungry, I should point that out. But our conversation doesn't prohibit or exclude or make difficult their meal. They're two unrelated things that are only happening simultaneously. And for the vast majority of the hashtag writing community, it's just people working simultaneously or concurrently. Oh, you're doing a thing? I'm doing a thing. And you're eating, well, I'm boom. Boom. I really should get a boom sound effect, but that's okay. But yeah, good for you for listening. I'm proud of you for eating. Good job. Thank you for eating and taking care of yourself. Big thumbs up. Would you like air horns? Have some air horns and drink some water. Anyway, the point remains that the vast majority of people you're going to interact with, they don't care. Not because you are beneath contempt, not because they don't like you. It's just because they have no real connection to you. It's sort of like saying, hey, John, somewhere in Alaska, there's somebody who's tying their shoes. Okay. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's nice to know that fact. It's great. It's delightful. But it doesn't stop anything. It doesn't mean anything to me. So if these are all the concentric groups, I should get the boom. You know what? I'm going to make myself a note, and then we're going to move on. So we have all these, is it POD? I wanted to get the Adam Cole boom, frankly. It's a better boom. But I'll put boom on the list. All right. So you've got all these concentric circles where the vast majority of people you won't even interact with aren't going to care if you succeed. And in part, that's going to affect why the group doesn't want you to succeed, because you're just insignificant comparatively. You are one writer. You are one person. Your successes are nice, good for you, hooray, big thumbs up, you deserve your successes, but you got to understand that this hashtag is not just yours. There's bajillions of people. I don't know how many, but fuck tons, metric fuck tons of people. It's that many. And it's not going to mean anything. Good for you, but it doesn't have any bearing anywhere else. And that's only half the problem. So, yeah, we're talking about sort of the density of this hashtag and the number of people engaged in an activity. Totally. But that's not the whole deal, because the rest of the deal is, if this were a community of any size that genuinely wanted you to do better at the thing you're a part of the community for, wouldn't that community have a vested interest in helping you do it better? Like, I'm just going to think of things off the top of my head. Political activist groups generally try to inform their membership about different ways they can be active in their community or different political stances, and they can promote education, and they can teach things, and they can share and distribute things. I don't know many socialist rifle clubs or political action groups that have a moment where they say something like, "What's your candidate's favorite latte? What sort of playlist would your preferred candidate listen to?" How does that accomplish anything other than take up time and space? The writing community, the hashtag writing community, doesn't want you to be a better writer, because if you were busy being a better writer, you wouldn't be on the hashtag. You wouldn't be sitting there refreshing Twitter a million times. You'd be going off and writing. And that's great, and that's fine, and that's what you should be doing. But if you're busy spending your time actually doing the work and improving your writing and moving forward with your career, you don't have time to play the reindeer games of like, "Oh my God, what's that? Is that like, what's your 5 favorite colors, and how would it be to meet your character?" Yawn. Jesus, what are you doing? Like, how do you think that's going to help you? Really, I'm going to wait right here. I will be right here in this Twitch chat. You tell me how you damn better refresh Twitter for John Adams threads. That's what's up. But if we're talking about writing community inane questions of the day, how is that going to help you figure out how to revise chapter 10? How is that going to teach you how to stop making that same mistake you're making with semicolons? How is that going to help you clue you into, oh, I think I've shifted POV. How do I fix this? Now, maybe somewhere somebody can go, but every once in a while, if I dig around a little bit, I can find somebody who's talking about it. Hi, I'm one of the people talking about it. But by and large, that's again one person in a sea of a million people. And if you're not following that person, or if the people you're not following aren't following that person, it's very easy that all that critical educational information gets lost in the shuffle for you because social media. Yes, how dare I hold you all accountable? I know, it's terrible. How dare I want you to succeed by making sure you're responsible in your behavior and actions? I mean, just what the hell's wrong with me? Why can't we just ask more inane questions and waste everybody's time? The hashtag writing community wants you to participate in the community. They want you to play the little games. They want you to join the little contests. They want to trot out little things like, hey, if you enter this contest, big air quotes, getting a hernia doing the lifting. If you enter this contest, you can win the thing you could be getting without entering the contest. Oh my God, someone will read your query in manuscript? Isn't it the same as the submissions process? Why did we have to gamify this? Oh, because it's a hashtag. Right. Yeah, the hashtag writing community has no vested interest in you succeeding. It doesn't want you to succeed. It wants you to participate. It wants you to feed the social media machine rather than make progress. So when you encounter those inane, stupid, pointless, pinheaded questions in the wild, they're designed to get you to engage. Please don't. Your work is more important than that. Now, if you're about to argue, but John, they help me think. They help loosen me up. They help create. They get my juices flowing. They get me thinking about all these things. Hey, right here. Look at me. Look at look right here at me. If you need something so inane to be the catalyst to get you to do the thing that you keep saying is important to you, how important to you is it really? Boom. That's where I need the boom. I do need a boom sound effect. Good call. And they also make you paranoid about adverbs. They also make you paranoid about dumb shit. because all of a sudden, oh my God, like I can't be doing this thing anymore. And in the mix of performative wokeness and alleged activism and the vast majority of just white lady performance writing, it doesn't help, because you can use adverbs. Go ahead. Are you using them effectively? I hope so. If not, you're going to have some trouble. But if you are, don't worry about it. I mean, just go do whatever you got to do to write your book. Seems pretty straightforward. Hashtag over, you guys. I mean, they just don't want you to succeed. They just want you to take up space and time, and don't do that. Great first question. Shall we go on to the second, which I promise you has less typos than the first one? Question 2, a bit more technical. How do I figure out who my ideal reader is? You're right about the fluff, but all that stuff can point you towards people who will help you. Yeah, eventually, but it's also likely that you'll have to do a lot of like digging around, and I don't think you should have to do that much digging. I found you. Well, I appreciate you finding me, Troy. It means a great deal. Thanks for being here. I just wish more I wish more people would find me. I'm delightful. And 2, I think people shouldn't have to dig so much. I think it should be right there, because if you really give a shit about creating more stories and, making a living doing this, everybody should be like super hyper eager to go out and like share actual knowledge as opposed to share inane shit. But, that requires getting over your fear of being rejected. So that's tough for a lot of people. All right. Question number 2, how do I figure out who my ideal reader is? Do we all know what an ideal reader is? I think I should. Let me just explain what an ideal reader is. The ideal reader is a consumer metric for the person who's most definitely going to engage with your work the most. They're going to be the person who's going to buy your book, whether it's self-published or traditionally published or hybrid published or whatever. They're the person you're aiming for. And ideally, there is more than one of them in existence. But in so many pieces of, particularly on the business side of things, tell you to think about your ideal reader. And that can be real confusing for somebody who's like, I don't know who my reader is. Like, I know there's somebody who reads science fiction fantasy, but past that, like, I have no idea if I'm, like, how do they identify? Where can I find? Like, I don't know any of the particulars. How do I find the particulars? Here's how you find the particulars. So step 1, you're going to identify you're going to think about your story in 2 ways. 1, you got to think about it as the thing with all the bits inside, the story stuff, your plot, your characters, your world building. We're going to put that over there. We're going to call that column A. Now we're going to come over here to column B, and we're going to think about your story as a book, a finished product. It doesn't matter if at the moment you're hearing this, you're not done writing it. I'm just asking you to conceive of it as a finished thing versus thinking of it in terms of its contents. We're going to start with the finished thing, okay? Column B, because I want you to identify the genre. You should be able to do this. It's pretty straightforward. Figure out your genre. Start with the biggest genre umbrella and break it down as many times as you need to or can. Okay, it's adult contemporary. Okay, let's zoom down deeper. It's a thriller. Okay. It's a psychological thriller. Okay. It's a psychological legal thriller. Cool. We've just funneled our idea down and down and down and down and down. If you don't know those labels, if you're looking at this going, how do I figure out what that is? Just start talking about your book. Well, what kind of story is it? Can you identify a thriller? It's a romance novel. Okay. It's a romance novel that takes place, 200 years in the past. So it's historical. It's an action story. It's a pirate story. It's got robots in it. Whatever identifiers you can come up with when you think about your book as a book can help figure out what genre that fits in. And you ask for help. Ask somebody. Go ask an agent or an editor or a bunch of randos, and they'll help you figure out who your basic genre umbrella identifiers are. Beyond that, you want to think of, now we're going to come over here to column A. You're talking about using the mice quotient. You can use the mice quotient. I don't like the mice quotient because Orson Scott Card is a piece of shit. And I try not to platform pieces of shit. But it's a thing you can do. it's not great, but it's a thing you can do. But we're going to jump over here from column B to column A and think about your story. So, what stuff you got in your story? Your protagonist. How does your protagonist identify? Readers who share some common ground with how your protagonist identifies tend, remember, because we're not making any concrete things here, we're being pretty flexible, tend to also be your ideal reader because they see themselves in the character. This is why representation matters, by the way. So we have readers based on a connection to the protagonist, just based on the function of who or what the protagonist is. Let's go one step further, back over here to column B. Column A. We're going to go look at the internal guts of the story. What's the plot? What's the conflict at the heart of this thing? Who would experience that kind of thing? Now I know you're about to tell me, well, it's about somebody who's trying to, become king. All right, well, that's not really relatable to the vast majority of people because we live in generally a non-monarchical society. So maybe it's about somebody increasing, growing in power, somebody getting what they want, somebody think about it broadly. You don't have to make it specifically about the story stuff, but look at the big picture. What's the conflict? An ideal reader who identifies with your protagonist, who can find some way to resonate with the conflict of the story, we are further identifying your ideal reader. Now we're going to come over here and go back to this column where we're talking about your book as a book. When we label your genre identifiers, we talked about the age, right? We talked about adult contemporary. So who did you write this book for? Adults, new adults, young adults, readers, middle grade, early readers, babies, well, early development, although honestly it's baby books. But which of those categories did you write for? Who were you trying to reach? Who would buy your book off the shelf? Now granted, the younger your reader, more likely your parent, that person's parent or guardian or, I don't know, cool person who has a van and candy is providing that little kid a book. That's the goal. But by and large, who buys your book, who identifies with your protagonist, who can resonate with some amount of the conflict in the story, and one more, we'll come back over here to the story stuff side. What are your themes? Because your themes can help identify your ideal reader, because they need something to chew on. If you're writing a sports underdog story, for instance, you're probably going to get much more traction and much more interest out of people who enjoy sports underdog stories or who themselves have been underdogs. Because it's heartwarming, because it's more emotional, because they have some kind of connection to it. When in doubt, when I'm telling you all these things and you're like, it just seems like you're vomiting a pile of stuff at me, John. When in doubt, figure out who is going to have a connection to your work on some level. That's it. That's your ideal reader. And if your picture of your ideal reader is somehow different than, I don't know, some agent who hopped on social media to do like a webinar, you know what? You're right and they're not. Why? Because it's your book. And you know your reader better. Now, there are going to be some people who are able to further subdivide their ideal reader down into age or geographic location or amount of education they've received, and that's fine. That's okay. That's nice, but at this point, honestly, it's a flex. It's not that big a deal anymore. It helps because you can further target like Facebook ads and Twitter ads about it, but on the whole, if you're in the ballpark, you're okay. And honestly, there's no real guarantee because people travel. Well, they used to travel. They don't do it so much anymore. But those groupings are really fluid. So don't get too locked down to like, my book is really popular for people named Todd who live in cities that start with a vowel, who have been to at least 11 credits worth of school, who are right-handed, who have a certain brand of shoelace. Like, the further you subdivide, the harder it is to find your ideal reader and the more pressure you put on yourself in order to finish or develop your work. So let's not totally boil this all down to vowel cities with Todds in them. And let's look instead at just groups of people at an applicable level. That's how you find out who your ideal reader is. Let's do one more, and then we'll open the floor because, oh my God, there's like a ton of people, and I'm so excited. And chat has blown up. Sweet. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll open the floor up. Question 3. Why can't I write a query letter in character? Okay. First of all, there's nothing stopping you. You can still write a query letter in character. It's just that it's going to like super identify you as somebody who's looking at information that's maybe 25 years old. It is incredibly old-fashioned and very much out of favor to do that. And the immediate response in chat is like, because yeah, it used to be very popular to, especially if you were going to start a series, especially if your hero was somebody stubbly with a dangerous backstory and a lot of enemies that you would discover over the course of many books. It was real popular to write like the bad boy as your querent, as your querent. This is my story and I'm going to tell you. And that's fine. You still can. In some circles, that's still, wanted. Not really so much anymore, but it's you could probably, if you really like wrote a banger, I bet you could, but it's more likely that it's going to make it sound like you love the story as a story and you don't really give a shit about it as a book. And if you're at the point where you're querying, you need to be able to conceive of your thing, your manuscript, as a book, because you were trying to enter a business relationship with a company that is going to give you money to produce it. And while it is important to recognize your story as a story in terms of character and plot and theme and world building and all this stuff, there's a whole extra layer of detail that you need to care about when you're talking about how do I sell this product to people. And when you write it in query, you are reinforcing sort of the narrow, shallow end of the pool where it's just, I like my story, you guys, and I think my character is the coolest, and I just really enjoy it, and whatever, I'm just doing stuff. And that's just going to get you rejected. Don't do it. It's not cool. It was kind of dorky when everybody was doing it before. It's only gotten dorkier. It's old-fashioned. It's almost always clumsy because somewhere in the query, you have to transition away from writing as your character to talk about the book as a book, where you've got to drop the title and the word count and bring up themes and comps if you want and all that other stuff. And it's real hard to do that in character because in character suggests that what you're doing is talking about the world as though the character is in it. Whereas when you talk about the business of a book, you're talking about the book in the real world. And that gap sounds real jarring. It would be all of a sudden, and this is essentially a fourth wall break. This is where all of a sudden somebody realizes, I'm a character in a story. Yeah, that shtick works once every 70,000 novels. Because otherwise it just feels tired and forced. So please don't write your query in character. Please do better than that. Be able to talk about your book as a book. Be able to talk about your work as though you owned your book and you're personally responsible for its successes and joys, and that you're not relying on the crutch of one character to do the heavy lifting because you're afraid of putting yourself out there. That's why you don't query in character. Woo! You see, you get me in a room that's in its mid-80s with no breeze, and I will just spice all over everything in terms of I'm just going to tell you, because I'm melting here. It is gross. I am, ugh. So the filter is rapidly depleting, and we'll just have to deal with it. All right. Does anybody in any of the chats, let me swing over here, does anybody in any of the chats have any questions? Else we will move on to question 4, which is, just a heads up, Vindaloo curry level spicy. Questions? Twitch? Zoom? By the way, YouTube, you're hearing about this after the fact. You can just leave your questions in the comments. It's totally fine. Somebody asked me that. Yeah, feel free to just actually use the comments. I do read them. Yes, I do prune like the weird sex ads, like the not cool sex ads or the bots out. But if you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'll answer them. What else? Have you seen me? What else am I going to do? Questions? All right. Regarding ideal customer, best advice I got before I wrote my first book was write the book you want to read but can't. How do I feel about that? Yeah, I think that's great advice for a first book. I think that's fantastic advice for a first book. Ooh, somebody used the word capitalist. I'm there. But I'm going to answer Troy's question first. Yes, you do want to write the book you want to read. Now, in part, that means you're going to play your favorites, and that can affect your storytelling. It also runs the risk of creating a couple darlings that you might have to, brutally destroy in the sake of revising and editing. But by and large, if you're using yourself as your ideal reader consumer, you are not necessarily entirely, but predominantly guaranteeing an enjoyable experience for both you, the writer, and somebody else who's got the same sort of likes and dislikes you do. It's a good starting point, especially if you're the sort of writer who feels super overwhelmed in terms of figuring out, like, well, who am I writing for? What's my voice? What about this? I read this information on the internet. I did this. I saw this. I did this inane question on the hashtag writing community. And all that stuff tends to bombard you and paralyze you. One of the best things you can use to sort of navigate your way out is follow that advice. Write the book you want to read, but can't. And the only reason, by the way, that you can't read the book you want is because no one has written it yet. And that's where you come in. But that's a great question. Yeah, I super think write the book you want to read, but can't is totally awesome for a first book. And then as you get deeper into writing and get better at writing, you can manipulate that and fine tune it. But it's a good starting point. Big fan. I got myself a job, Ross says. Hey, Ross, good job getting a job. I know that's not easy. I got myself a job and I joined the capitalist machine on Monday. Comrade, I am sorry. What's the best way to ease into a new writing routine? I'll give you two. How's that? I'll give you two things. One, please don't try and make your new writing routine your old writing routine. Because one of the factors you have not counted on, because it hasn't happened yet, is how tired on any level the new job is going to make you. So it would only generate frustration if you were like, well, I used to write, I'm going to make numbers up, Ross, bear with me. I used to write an hour every other day. But that was pre-job. And if this job, whatever it is, I don't know, not really important. But if this job absolutely like grinds you out physically, that you don't have the energy, then yeah, you don't really want to get into a situation where you're beating yourself up because, well, I used to hold myself to this standard, but now like it's so different. I can't even do that. I feel like such a failure because I'm only working at 1/3 of what I used to. Yeah, but you've changed a lot. Like, and I don't mean change a lot like you're a bad person. I mean like your flexibility has changed. Like you've got this other commitment now. So step one, don't measure your new routine by your old routine. That's going to give you a little bit of breathing room and a little bit of an ability to say, okay, new experience, new routine. Step two, this is about building the new routine. Aim lower than you think is reasonable, and you will be pleased with the results. It's the same thing you get with public speaking, where they tell us all the time to think. If we think we are speaking too slow, we are probably, for the majority of audiences, speaking perfectly fine. It is a trick I do myself. So in terms of setting writing goals, whether that's word count or deadline or clock watching or chapter progression or scene progression or note card filing or whatever metric you're using, aim lower than you think you should, especially when you're getting started. So if you're looking at your time like, okay, well, my job's not so bad. I'm not, it doesn't completely beat the shit out of me. I think I can dedicate, instead of 3 hours a week, I can dedicate 2 hours a week. That's not bad. 2 hours is fine, but let's scale it back. What if we scaled it down to an hour and a half? What if we scaled it down to 2 45-minute chunks? I know that's significantly less than before, but we can always ramp up because we are aware of the time and the energy it takes. It is much harder to scale backwards over and over and over again. It is better to have flexibility in a schedule and not need it than need it and not be able to give yourself. So, step one, please don't measure yourself against your non-capitalist machine working writing schedule. Things have changed. It's sort of like saying you right now would not measure yourself by your, pant size when you were 2/3 of the age you are now, right? Or a third of the age you are now. Like if you're 30, you wouldn't measure your life by the size pants you wore when you were 10. It just doesn't make sense. Likewise, with a writing schedule, you used to do this, but you didn't have a job. So things have been changed. And when you are laying out your new schedule, you do want to, I'm going to put the emphasis on the word you used, ease. You want to ease into it because you can always modulate it after the fact. But the best way to ease into it is to not sit there and beat yourself up that, oh my God, I didn't get it right the first time. Yeah, fine, go ahead. Figure it out again. You're still going to write. Nobody's saying like, no, dude, you've joined the capitalist machine. Turn in your keyboard. Nobody's saying that. That's not a thing. Just lowball yourself so that when you can exceed it without difficulty, like, oh, wow, okay. Next week, tomorrow, 3 weeks, 2 days from now, 3 days from now, whatever, the next time I sit back down to write, I know I can give myself a little bit more space. I know I can say, okay, I budgeted 45 minutes, but I think I can do an hour today. And then you just give it a try. And you don't sort of Damocles it where it's, oh my God, I said it was going to be an hour and it's only 59 minutes. I'm a failure. It's not that. Not that at all. Great question. Great question. On we march. Other questions? About stuff else? We're going to go rock this fourth question that is so spicy I'm going to chug water. It's really hot in here when all the ice in my water is melted. All right. On we go. Just look over here at Zoom. Any questions? Nope. Cool. Fourth question. Hey, John, how do you respond to the idea that editors are too expensive? I just got to stretch a little bit. Yeah, Ross, no one's ever going to tell you to turn your keyboard in, man. You're in charge of when you hang up the board. Nobody else. You're going to be fine. But I'm going to go do this spicy question now. How do I respond to the idea that, does it involve air horns? No, it does not. It actually involves, where is it? The red alert bell. Because here's what I say in response. Editors are too expensive? No, your laziness is too expensive. Straight up, you're just lazy. Here's why. So let's suppose you're going to traditionally... So first of all, I'm going to divide this into two camps. One, the self-published crowd. Two, the traditional publishing crowd. Cool? Cool. Let's start with the traditional publishing crowd. Because you guys are the ones who are always like, it's more legit. No, it's not. No, it's not. But you keep swearing it's better somehow. So let's deal with you first. Let me just look at my watch. And it is, in fact, ass-kicking time. So let's go. You guys keep saying things like, well, the publisher has an editor. They'll edit it. My agent, my pimp, will edit my stuff. I don't have to get it edited. That's ridiculous. They want to see it messy. Yo. Hey, right here. Look at me. If my job is to sell a book, why on earth would I want it to be messy? The longer it takes me, whether I'm a pimp or a publishing house editor, the longer it takes me to get the book into a shape where I can sell it, the harder it's going to be for me to justify continuing to do something with it. Because if it's going to take 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, that's half a different publishing schedule away. And now I'm looking at next year. Now I'm looking at the next season because I can't roll out a spring book in winter. It's not going to market well. So now I'm looking at 2 years on the calendar, all because you didn't want to edit your goddamn book. Because it's expensive. Yeah, well, I'm out here trying to just be a publishing house editor, and I've got 15 books to deal with. You think I'm going to deal with your messy one happily? Oh, man, bring me that messy stuff. Yeah, I say that I'm a freelancer. I'm also weird. But as a publisher who's on deadlines with expectations, who has got to roll things out in very short windows, far shorter than you're thinking, I don't have time to keep holding your hand and explaining to you, like, look, man, that's not how a semicolon works. So you could have saved me and the publisher a great deal of time and frustration if you just got your shit edited at the jump. Because it's nice that, you know, you're a writer, it's great, but I got to sell this book. And if it's a mess and it's going to take forever to fix, it's just going to take longer for me to sell, and it's going to take longer for me to make my money back as a publisher, and I'm not here for that. But then you think you're being very clever. But John, if I edit the first book, then the agent and the publisher are going to expect an edited second book. Yeah, they are. That's the whole point. That's the circle of editorial life. Cue Elton John. That's the point. Editors are too expensive. Oh, okay. Do you not like it when we eat? Like, you got to eat, man. You got to keep the lights on. Cats to feed. People don't deserve a living wage. Really? That's the hill we're gonna die on today? Okay. But no. My pimp will edit it. Yeah, I don't know how to tell you this. Most agents' strongest skill is not editing. I mean, they're okay at it, out of necessity. But, you know, my non-strongest skill is cooking. I mean, I'll cook. I can cook pretty well. But if you were to ask me to, like, John, run a restaurant, no, I can't cook that well. Or at least that consistently. So why not actually trust somebody to do the job they're trained at doing? Yeah. Now, if it comes down to, I just don't have the money. Okay, guess what? Nobody has the money. That's capitalism. Here you go, comrade, grab a hammer. There are payment plans. There's very extensive payment plans. There's all different kinds of options to spread this payment out, to work out in deals, to edit in pieces, loads of flexibility. But don't rely on your agent, pimp, whose job it is to convince other people to buy this thing. If it's messy, they got to spend more time fixing it. And if they're spending all their time fixing it, they're not spending as much time selling it. And again, I'll remind you, traditional publishing people, everybody past you is trying to sell this book to somebody else. So why not make that easier on everybody involved? But don't worry, I'm not done skewering. Let's go over and talk to the self-publishing people. Hey, what's up? Self-publishing people, editors are too expensive. Again, I'm going to point to the fact that I just talked about payment plans and partial payments and trade deals and loads of different ways to be flexible, coupon codes, all that stuff, right? Loads of different ways to make that work. But you're going to say, oh, but no, but wait, but no. There's all this software. There's all this stuff. I have beta readers. Oh, boy, howdy. All right, first, let's talk about the software. You know those memes where somebody's like, I gave an AI 600 hours of soap operas, and this is the script they generated. Yeah, you want to do that with an AI? You want to just blanket apply rules minus context and see what happens? You want to strip the nuance out of things? I'll give you a non-writing example. How's that, self-publishing people? I'll give you a non-writing example. You can get a machine right now, they sell it, that you can just plug into your vacuum and you can use it to cut your hair. You can super do that. You can absolutely use a vacuum attachment to cut your hair. Because it's cheaper. It's a one-time payment. You plug it into your Dyson or what your Eureka or I don't know, whatever brand is still making vacuums, and you use the vacuum attachment to trim down your hair, okay? Or you could go to somebody who actually has scissors and expertise and isn't going to give you a Prince Valiant bowl cut. Which of those two things do you think you want? Do you want the expert or do you want the blanket approach? Because if you're saying, I want the blanket approach, you're just lazy. Just lazy. Lazy and cheap, the two things that will sink any self-publishing writer. I don't want to do the work. That's somebody else's problem. Dude, you're in self-publishing. Literally everything is your problem. It's too expensive. You're just cheap. You're just cheap. And as my chat has just gone hype for Floby, fun fact, I once bought one for a girl I was dating. It did not go well. She did not find it as funny as I did. But I'll tell that story on Discord sometime. Anyway, as my chat is pointing out, that it is very easy to be reasonable with payment plans. It is very easy to find a human being who can tailor their advice to your work rather than give you just, the Chicago Manual of Style, page 202 says the rule is this. Yeah, that's great. But how does it apply to the writer in specific? So how do I respond to the idea that editors are too expensive? You're just lazy and cheap. And wait, hang on. The beta readers. I almost walked away without saying the most important thing. Please don't exploit people who are doing labor for you. Because chances are you're not paying your beta readers. Well, they're beta readers. They're just, what are you asking them to do? Read your thing and give you feedback? You think they got a lot of free time for that? You think that's like the thing they signed up to do every day? Like, I just worked, 10 hours. I come home. I got to deal with my kids and my family and my partners and the pets and the bills. And then, oh, by the way, I got to read your shitty ass book. Like, that's not worth compensation. You're handing them an incomplete thing that needs help. You're expecting them to operate at, heavy duty peak performance, but then asking them to do that after they've done all their other stuff. Like, you're taking gross advantage of them. And I'm sorry that anybody has let you do that, but that stops now. Pay your beta readers. Pay them something. If you were doing that job, wouldn't you want to be paid? So why doesn't that apply to them too? But that's how I respond to the idea that editors are too expensive. It is probably the big irritant, and not just because I'm an editor who's like, how am I going to pay the electric bill this month? Or how am I going to do this month? Just in general, if you got off your ass and you gave a shit, we could all make this work better. You can chew on that for a while. And yes, fuck you, pay me. Because it's, I did my job. Where's my paycheck? On to question 5, an editing relating one. Yeah, you want to pay your beta readers something. It doesn't have to be like, super a lot of money, but it can be like, hey, I'll buy you dinner. Or, if you're local, I'll mow your lawn. So, fun fact, there's somebody who comes and mows my lawn now. And they are compensated because they have said they're going to try and go to college. And they need help prepping, and they need help with an essay and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'll totally help you with that. You mow my lawn, and I'll explain to you how to do that. Fine. There's your deal. Not difficult. Not rocket science. All right. On to question 5. Question 5. What's one editing stumbling block I'm, the writer, probably not thinking enough about? Oof. Now, normally I would tell you probably something about punctuation or probably something about patterning, because I talked about both of those things earlier this week. Patterning, just in shorthand, patterning is the idea that throughout the course of the manuscript that you have specific things reoccurring. Now, maybe that specific things... Thanks. Maybe that's specific things... There's a storm warning for my area. Maybe that's specific things like you keep using the character's name over and over again. Or maybe that's the fact that every paragraph on this page starts with the same pronoun. Or that all your dialogue in this scene is 2 word, in quotes, 2 words, the dialogue tagged in the rest of the sentence. It's bad? Okay. Good to know. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. If we have to bail out, we bail out. That's fine. But for now, patterning is usually my go-to. But you know what? I've talked about that enough that I'm pretty sure you're cognizant of it. So I'm going to give you a different one tonight. I bet you are editing out your voice. I bet what you are doing is called disrupting your voice. Disrupting your voice is pretty straightforward. It happens all the time. It happens a lot, especially with new writers, especially with younger writers, especially with writers who are just trying really hard to accomplish a lot of things, but they're not quite sure and they don't really have a lot of support. You see this in a lot of Discord communities. You see this in a lot of Facebook communities. And all it is, straight up, is taking the rule at face value and applying it and prioritizing a rule. Or, if you want to really stretch this, advice given on the internet and applying it beyond the context of just your work. Yeah, I know you wrote that fragment because you wanted to say a specific thing with that fragment, but this internet advice and that rule book says fragments are bad, so the fragment goes. And in doing that, you tear out something that allows your story to maintain or develop its voice. I'm not saying you have to always 1000% every time reject every rule, because there are rules you're going to follow without question, without issue, because that's how language works. And then there are some rules that you're going to apply sporadically, situationally, contextually. And then there are other rules you are going to apply rarely, like a foil Pokemon. Is that still a thing? Did I just super date myself? I don't know. But you're going to apply these things maybe once or twice and then disregard them the rest of the time because it benefits the story, because it benefits what you're doing. Then there are other rules. Pokemon's always a thing. Sweet. Then there are other rules you're going to look at them and go, that's the dumbest thing I've read today, so I'm out. I'm not even going to bother with it. I'm just going to leave it alone. It doesn't apply to me. It might be a rule, and it might be a rule for some people, but it is not a rule for me, so out it goes. Too many writers, especially debut writers, especially writers who are like, I need this book to be perfect because it's my first one. They strip out their voice trying to make it correct, trying to make the manuscript perfect, trying to make it flawless. And that's not to say voice is a flaw. That's a real simplification of things. But you strip out the personality. You strip out how you sound so that you distinguish yourself from all the other people because you're more important about, oh, well, those are sentence fragments. That's a dependent clause. I should use an M dash here. Yeah, maybe you should just tell your story. How about you just tell your story? How about you just tell your story? And we'll deal with the rules later. Like when they generate actual problems. Cool? Cool. So yeah, ditching your voice is, I think, one of those editing stumbling blocks you're probably not spending enough time thinking about. Let's do another, and then we'll open the floor back up for questions. Oh, man, look at that. We're playing with the format. Question 6. Gentle advice halfway through? What's going on? I don't know. We're trying something. It's a work in progress. Gentle advice. How should I start looking for an editor or coach to help me improve my writing? Like this. Attend chats. Sign up to newsletters. Ideally, though, you want to get into a situation where you're actually communicating with the person rather than having one-way conversation. One-way conversation, if you're not sure, is like, I listened to your webinar or I listened to your podcast. And there's no way for the other person to say or respond. It's always it's not just a delay. Like, I wrote you an email last night. I mean more like, I listened to a thing you said 6 years ago. And there's no way to like close that time dilation gap. So how do you start? Have a conversation with them. Just have a conversation. Hi, what are you? Oh, you're a writing coach? What's the difference between a writing coach and an editor? And you ask questions. However, hang on. However, don't do that thing that some people do where they're interviewing you for like a job, because that's not going to help either of you. Don't ask for samples right off the bat. This isn't Costco. We're not looking to collect free snacks in the aisle. Don't sit there and run down somebody's academic performance, because my academic performance was horse shit, and my career is vastly better than what I learned in school. Don't sit there and go, well, who else can I talk to, as if you doubt the person's ability. If you doubt the person's ability, walk away. First and foremost, See if you can talk to them. See if you can have a conversation with them. See if you vibe with each other. Ask a few questions. Talk about your work. Hey, I'm working on this thing. It sounds like this. I'm having trouble with this. Even if you don't know what the trouble is, just talk about your goals. I'm writing science fiction fantasy. I want to get published. I'm trying to get this done in 8 months. I'm writing a romance novel. I'm really struggling with setting up the love triangle. Or I'm writing big epic fantasy, and I think I've got too many points of view. I'm worried about this. It seems a little like that. Just bring the questions up and see what the other person says. And if you dig what they're saying, keep talking to them. If not, find somebody else. You don't have to jump right away to a system that makes big, giant promises. You don't have to throw thousands of dollars in a hole for I'm going to go sit in the 7th row of a ballroom at a hotel. You just need to be able to have a conversation with a human being and go, here's what I'm trying to do. How can I get there? And see what they have to say. And I'm going to tell you this. I will tell you this flat out. If their move, if you go, here's what I'm trying to do. How can I get there? If their move is to upsell you on something that is vastly more expensive than what you're planning on doing, I need you to run away. I don't care what their name is. I don't care who they've worked with. I don't care how great they are on the internet. Run, because all they're going to try and do is upsell you rather than put the focus where it should belong, which is on you getting better at doing your work. So just have conversations and ask all the questions, even the embarrassing dumb ones, even the ones you're pretty sure are like going to peg you as though you've never written a thing before, because fun fact, a lot of people you talk to haven't written anything before, so it's okay. Hey, look, it's spam, everybody. Say goodbye to spam. Bye, spam. All right. Ooh, it's another one. I'll deal with you later. So where was I? Right. I was over here banning people with glee. So ask your embarrassing questions. Ask the stuff you're pretty sure is going to peg you as somebody new, because it's good to be new. It's good. It's genuinely good to be new. It's okay to not know what you're doing. It's okay to ask questions. It's actually ideal to ask questions. There is nothing worse than talking to somebody or working with somebody who doesn't ask questions. And yeah, I don't mean like structural grammar questions. I mean like any questions. Even if it's like, is my thing any good? Was it boring? I love those questions. They make me excited. Because they tell me that you care about your work. It's okay to ask that. You can ask that you can ask me that I have somebody ask me that every week, and I adore them. I think the world of them because the question's sincere. I keep telling them over and over. It's not boring. When it gets boring, I'll tell you. Hasn't happened yet. So I'm sure they're going to keep asking though. But it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Just talk to them. Ask questions. Do not be intimidated. That said, this is not me saying do not be intimidated because they need you, because they're working for you and you get to treat them like shit. They're not customer service that you get to abuse, Karen. They're just not. What they are instead is somebody trying to help you do a thing that is difficult, that for a lot of people is very emotional, that generates a lot of vulnerability, that is personal and intimate. So maybe treating them like shit is not the best way to get done what you want to get done. And instead, you're working together. You're working together. You're not doing the same tasks side by side, but you're doing things collaboratively to work towards a common goal. You want your book published. The editor wants your book published. Everybody profits. Straightforward. That's how you get started. Just talk to them. Just have conversations. Twitch, Zoom, questions. Anybody else? We're going to march on to, I think it might be like the most technical writing question. Oh my God, there's a thing. Regarding voice, I'll occasionally use dialogue for dramatic effect, but editors and proofreaders telling me that's wrong. Are those things hardcore out of favor now? They're not hardcore out of favor, but they're dated. I mean, they're okay. You can use them. It's not the end of the world. Like, it's not the same as writing in like Middle English. They're a little out of favor only because they're hard for newer readers to parse. There's a different cadence to things now. There's a different sound structure to things now. So you're sort of earmarking a throwback. Well, yeah, I do it too. So, yeah, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's just dated. You could still do it. If they're telling you that it's wrong to do it, it's probably more of a frequency issue than a substantive issue. It's not wrong that you're doing it. It's probably wrong that you're doing it too much. I'd scale it back and see if that changes the response you're getting. But by and large, they're a little bit old. They're shoulder pads in a blouse, or a jacket rather. They're shoulder pads in a jacket. They're big teased Aquanet hair. Oh man, there's some great questions coming in. Oh my God, I love when you guys pick this stuff up. Lately, I keep finding myself going off outline. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. He keeps going off outline, you guys. And adding new scenes. Any advice on reining myself in a little? Why do you want to rein yourself in? If you're sidestepping the outline one step to add one scene, put it in. Worst case scenario, you take it out later. If you're deviating hard off the outline because you're adding a whole new subplot with extra characters, what I want you to write on the top of your outline is follow me, and then put the outline nearer to the keyboard so that you see it. But if you're taking short road trips off page because I want to cover this, I want to do that, just put it in. The worst case scenario is that you take it out. One of the other things you can do, by the way, because the word count keeps blowing, well, that's what editing is for. The other thing you can do is when you get that urge to go off, immediately move to the next scene in your outline. Try being hyper rigid for a minute. See if that helps. Some people it does. Some people respond to that real, real well. And then it's just like stick to the outline, stick to the outline, stick to the outline. For some people that leaves Swiss cheese, which then they can go back in and patch, which is fine. But for a lot of people, just that rigidity makes them freak out, and it makes them stop writing because all of a sudden it goes from being creative to being this very concretized thing, and not everybody digs that. One of the other things you can do is give yourself one. I'm allowed to go one step off. If I've already done my one step for this act, I don't do more. But by and large, your word count's ballooning. Everybody says that like they're going to add like 100,000 words, and very rarely, only the real messy writers who lack profound levels of discipline and organization are going to like quintuple their word count, and that's only because they haven't learned how to not do that. But mostly, if you're taking short hops off your outline every time over and over and over again, there's a problem with your outline. It's probably lacking some detail, or you're not thinking through the arc sufficiently enough, which is what's making you write more stuff on the fly. But chances are you either have to be more disciplined and tell yourself to stick to outline and see what happens, or you need to get off your back and just let the word count balloon a little bit and then deal with it later. And then when you deal with it later, trim harshly. A lot of people, when they deal with bloated word count, aren't being rigorous enough in what they cut. But that is probably a different question later on tonight, I think. But for now, try being a little rigid and hold yourself accountable. Good question. Next question. Oh my God, there's more. They're coming. This is awesome. I love this so much. So we've edited the book before we submit to an agent. Yeah, you did. Fuck yeah. How much editing generally happens on their end? You mean the agent? How much editing does the agent do? They're going to do somewhere between a copy and a line edit. They're going to mostly look for continuity to make sure your names are consistent, to make sure your structure is consistent, to make sure that your big beats in your story are effective. Like, hey, when you say this is the climax, it's climactic. And hey, this is the low point, this is the low point. They're going to identify the big picture ticket, the big ticket items. More tea is good. The the depth of that editing and the depth of those comments, it's not going to be the same thing you got from your editor. It's 99% of the time not. It's going to be generally more positive because they have a vested interest in patting you on the head, because that way they like you and you like them and everybody's on the same page and we all try to like sell your shit. But by and large, the structural technical editing, it's not. They're going to polish, and they're going to maybe tweak some of the internal guts. Because if they find something really huge, like a big-ass red flag, like, oh my God, what the hell happened to your third act? They're going to tell you to go talk to somebody else. They're going to go tell you to talk to an editor. Like, hey, here's a freelancer we use. Hey, here's a writing coach. Unfuck this. But by and large, it's a line. Treat it like a line edit. They're going to make sure things are consistent. They're going to make sure your spelling and your descriptions are accurate. They're big on the cosmetic stuff. They're big on the, like, hey, you said they were blonde, so you make them blonde all the way through. Or you said they were tall, you make sure they're tall all the way through. They're trying to get the most consistency out of the text. That's usually what they do. And then they're looking for, like, what are called promo points, which is stuff they're like, yeah, this is so cool, because they can turn that around as a selling point when they go to talk to publishers about it. Oh, yeah, I love that. It's got this one great scene with, like, a building collapse. Yeah, because that's what they're talking about. They want to look for stuff they can help sell your book with. That's what they're looking for when they edit. Great question. Oh, man, a big one. How do I decide if I should switch my manuscript from past tense to present tense? I've grown to love the immediacy of present tense when writing, but I'm not sure it's wise to switch an entire manuscript's verb tense just because I like that tense for another project. How do I decide if it's a good choice and not just an emotional one? All right, fun fact, it's always going to be an emotional one because there is no technical difference. Well, just don't make a face. Just hold up. There's no strategic. All right. How do I explain this? You want to use the past tense when you want to make sure that you're creating some level of separation from the narrative flow of story and the reader's engagement with the story. You want to put in a little bit of space so that you can use that distance you gain to further develop the story. You tell a story in the past tense and you have more, because you're removing it from active chronology, you can talk about more shit. You can take more up space. You can do more stuff with it. In the present tense, there is that sense of immediacy, like it's happening right around the protagonist, that it's happening right around the reader. As I'm reading it, this is going on, and it feels more urgent, and it feels more motile, it feels more in motion, and it feels more momentous. Beyond that, though, it's literally just different letter combinations when written. So if you are looking for a story, if you are looking for a way to tell a story where you want to benefit from that immediacy, when you want to benefit from that sense of mobility, when you want to benefit from that sense of momentum, present tense. When you are looking to manage the pace at a different scale, when you are looking to create a buffer so that you can dive deeper, past tense. That's it. That's the decision process. Genre does not come into play. Genre might have conventions that suggest like, oh, okay, so you're writing this kind of story, it's generally told in the past tense. That doesn't mean you have to write it in that tense, it's just that lots of people do, but that doesn't make it good because lots of people took horse dewormer and look where that got them. So think about it in terms of what you want to gain for your work. Cool? Cool. Great question. All right, on to question 7. 7. What are the 3 most important things an opening scene needs to do? Okay, I'm going to give you 3 things. These are not in order of priority. These are in the order I thought of them. Okay? 3 things they need to do. So, first of all, it has to deal with some amount of the story triangle. Do we all know the story triangle? Plot, character, world. The first thing an opening scene needs to do is deal with some amount of at least two of those things. Plot and world, character and plot, character and world, plot and character. Some grouping of two of those three need to be dealt with because that's where the story is. If you just deal with one of those things, you're going to get a very harsh impression from your reader. For example, if you just open your story up just dealing with world building, you're going to put the reader to sleep. It's going to sound like you were giving the backstory on every blade of grass on the lawn. You might not mean it that way, but that's how it's going to come across because you were taking forever and a day to get somewhere interesting. It's interesting to you because you wrote it. Remember, that's not the same thing as a reader. Let's say you go right to plot. It's going to seem like the story's really, really starved and really, really underdeveloped, that you only have this one set of actions and you're only doing that. And it's going to seem like the story doesn't deviate a lot or grow a lot. It just kind of gets on this one track and speeds along. But let's say you develop character. The story's going to feel really slow. It might be engaging, but it's going to feel incredibly slow. Because while you are detailing this character and covering who they are and covering how they feel, not a lot of activity is happening. So the first thing an opening scene needs to do is deal with some amount of the story triangle. Second thing the story needs to do. Story needs to engage the reader. Now, some people interpret that as you have to start with an action scene. You got to start in the middle of an action scene. You got to start in the middle of something happening. And most people further interpret that to mean, when I say action, I mean you got to blow shit up. It's got to be like a Michael Bay CGI bukkake orgasm in here. And it doesn't. I mean, it can. Not the end of the world if it does, but like we're not all two generic fighting robots fighting each other. Just because you're told start in the middle of an action does not mean action is explosions. It just means have something happen. But you can engage a reader or a listener or an audience member or a consumer or a viewer or whatever art you're making her. You can engage them just by having something engaging said. It can be a line somebody says. It can be an action. It can be a thought. It can be a description. It can be something. You just want to gain the reader's attention and maintain it so that they keep reading. If that means you got to blow up you got to blow up a building, great. If that means you got to, burn down the magic forest, great. If that means you got to talk about how super powerful the Rabbit King is, great. Whatever it is you got to do, find some way to engage them. Now, part of that's going to be a guess. Just a heads up, part of that's going to be a guess. Because the person on the other end of your writing, reading experience, they're not there. You're delayed. They're in the future. And you're not in their brain. So you're taking a stab that, hey, I think you're going to like this. And the confidence with which you deliver that concept helps. So pick something engaging. We're going to go all the way back to something mentioned earlier. You want to write the book you'd want to read. So if it's really engaging you and you've done some stuff to help develop the story triangle and you've written it in an engaging way, you're not just shorthanding it, chances are you're going to engage somebody else. Okay? That's the next thing you need to do. The last thing you need to do, and this is the one that doesn't really get talked about so much, you need to teach the reader how to read your book. Now, I'm not just talking about like if your reader is learning to read, like they are learning about phonics and sentence structure and words and capital letter. I'm not, that's true. If that's what you're writing, yes, that's what you need to do. But for any other non-early reader, for an adult reader, for a romance reader, for a young adult writer, for a young adult novelist, whatever, you have to teach them how you're going to tell the story. You're going to show them over the course of this opening scene, hey, here's how I write action sentences. Here's how I write descriptions. Here's how I get in the head of my character. Here's how they deliver dialogue. Here's how I describe the weather. Here's how I lay out paragraphs. you're putting together whatever the scene is in whatever way the scene is. That's fine, and that's great, and that's good. But one of the other things you're accomplishing just in the act of writing, you are teaching them how to read, so that when they read a book by you, they have an expectation that it's going to sound a certain way, that it's going to include certain concepts, that it's going to be, move at a certain pace, that it's going to, not involve certain things but have other stuff, or it's going to have paragraphs this size, or a voice like this, or a character like that. You're teaching them how to read you so that you can use them and grow with them to build that active fan base and build that community and build that readership so that everybody benefits. You get to write more books, they get to buy more books, everybody wins. Those three things effectively deal with the story triangle. Engage the reader and keep them reading. Teach the reader how to read your book. Those three things are what an opening scene should be dealing with. Is it 33, 33, 33 all the way through? Not always. But you need to be doing those three things to some degree in your opening scene. Chances are, just as an aside, chances are the two things you're not doing enough of, one, you're not really starting to engage the reader and keep them reading, and two, you're not doing enough to develop your story triangle. Teaching them to read your story is pretty straightforward just because you've got words on the page. But developing that story and holding their attention and making the story happen, that's the trickier one. That's the part. That's why we have multiple drafts. That's why we spend time developing this stuff. Great. 7th question. Awesome. Let's go. 8th question. 8th question. This one came up, I think this was a Twitter DM. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was a Twitter DM out of the blue. How do you write an opening scene in a memoir? Do memoirs even have scenes? Yes. First of all, memoirs have scenes. Every story has scenes. Memoirs have scenes. Sometimes they're not called scenes. Sometimes they're called events. But by and large, it's still a scene because the narrating character or the narrating voice is still trying to paint a picture in the reader's head. So whether you're writing in first person or whether you're writing in third person or whether you're writing about something in a sort of modified present tense or in a distant past tense, you're still trying to say, okay, so this is the story of that one time at Thanksgiving where the dog got up on the table. You're still trying to paint a picture. You're still trying to evoke imagery in the mental theater of your reader. So how do you write an opening scene in a memoir? See previous question. Develop your story triangle. Now, your story triangle, instead of being hyper-fictive, where you've just made a ton of shit up, chances are you're dealing with real people. And you're narrating character and their life and their activities and their views on things. So you've got your character covered. And the world is the world of the story, so that's covered. But what's plot? Plot in a memoir is theme, or it's central concept. It's philosophy you're trying to get across. Here are the life lessons of a person down on their, from a hard scrabble, hard-fought life. Okay, those things influence your scenes. And then you just follow the same rules. Develop your story triangle. Engage the reader, keep them reading. Teach them how to read your book. But memoirs have scenes. And you organize it just like you would any other nonfiction. Structurally, with a little bit more rigidity than we give fiction. But yeah, what's going to be an engaging first point for your reader? Start there. That's how you start a memoir. Great question. On to 9. And another mouthful of water. 9, a marketing question. What is the carousel approach to marketing? Oh, man. Carousel approach to marketing is something that's not done enough in writing circles, but it's really common in other creative forms, particularly sex work. The carousel approach to marketing is where you have a specific set of content and you put it out to multiple platforms. and it goes around and around the carousel. It takes its turns. I'm going to post it to this site. I'm going to post the same thing in a different order slightly to that site, and in a third set, different order to the third site. And you're going around and around the carousel. And sometimes, since it's the same content across multiple platforms, one of those platforms gets slightly more interaction or slightly more content. Because, hey, this week we're spotlighting platform number 2. So maybe when you're writing the marketing for platform number 2, you're spending a little bit more time and space and a few more words. Not necessarily creating extra content for them, although that is an option. But sometimes you're just, when you're writing the blurb in the sales copy, you're leaning in a little bit more. You're giving it a little bit more detail. What's this method? The carousel, also called the round and round carousel. You know, the thing, the merry-go-round. It's called a carousel because stuff goes in a cycle, in a big circle. It's frequently done in sex work, especially when one platform decides they don't want to be a sex work platform anymore and they get real cranky and then they say, no, please don't leave. We need the money. So you get workers producing content and then putting it out on like 3 different platforms. And it's the same stuff. So you get some overlap, but they lean into the sites they prefer because they want to draw more traffic or they want to put more eyes on stuff. This doesn't happen so much in writing because writing has a real limitation of platform. People have multiple pieces of social media, but it almost always drives towards, hey, buy my book, or hey, check out my website. So how can a writer apply the carousel approach? It takes a little bit of creativity, but instead of having the same message put on different platforms, you're going to take different portions of a message. And I don't mean literal portions. I don't mean like you're going to write 3 paragraphs and then slice it up. I mean conceptually. So we have this overall message of the week, let's say. This week, this blog post is about XYZ, and I've got this piece of content to go with it and this link to go with it. You find one way of presenting XYZ and its link and its content for one platform. XYZ and a link and the content in a different permutation with different words for a second platform. And then XYZ and the content and link in a third permutation for the third platform. And if your immediate gut response is, oh my God, that sounds like work. Hey, guess what? Marketing your stuff is work. But it goes around and around on the carousel. Around and around and around. And then when that cycle is up, on come more people, on come more platform, on come more stuff. New riders, new carousel. Around and around we go, repeat. It's a very effective tool for broadcasting either limited material to multiple platforms, or it's great for growing in multiple directions. It's going to be slower because you're spreading that growth out across multiple platforms than if you were just to focus on one and grow in one direction. But as I think we've all seen in the last couple of weeks, there is a benefit to having smaller growth across multiple platforms rather than just diving deep on one and then freaking out when that one focus or that one platform decides to change all the rules. Carousel marketing works. Great question. So before we pivot to our last third, questions, anybody? Twitch? Oh, man. I got a Zoom question, everybody. Okay. Can I describe different kinds of arcs? We discussed before circular arcs. We have discussed circular arcs. I learned that some characters may not have arcs at all. Are good arcs always ascending arcs? First of all, no, not all good arcs are always ascending. Sometimes your good arc is descending, but that's not because of the arc itself. It's because that's what serves the character and the character goal. So let's say you're writing a story where your character is going to spend 300 pages slowly succumbing to terrifying illness. I don't know, they have turn into mayonnaise-itis. Sure, why not? So over the course of this story, as they become more and more disgusting, gross mayonnaise, their arc trends downward. It descends because the end result is to turn them into mayo. It can be a good arc in terms of it being satisfying and it being positive. Positive meaning it's enjoyed by people, not positive for the character, because obviously the character is going to turn into mayonnaise. So you have arcs, and rather than evaluate them as good and bad, try to look at them in terms of successful relative to their goal versus unsuccessful relative to their goal. And then the next question is, did you intend for them to succeed or not? So if you have a goal that is successful, or an arc that is successful in reaching its goal, and that's what you were going for, thumbs up, good job. If you were trying to get an arc to go in a certain way, or you were trying to get a certain amount of impact from that arc, and you failed to do so, then that arc needs to be looked at. But in terms of labeling your arcs and your archetypes, I mean, sure, I can do that. You have ascending and descending arcs. Those are arcs that trend towards more successes or trend towards more failures. But you also have things like redemption arcs, where a character starts off one way and then over the course of the story changes to the polar opposite, generally because they've undergone action to undo their past. You have retribution arcs, which is, like, you left me for dead, or you killed my puppy, so now I'm going to murder all of you. You have, that's also called a vengeance arc. Same thing. There's a ton of, it's not like we have one list of like 12. There's like a bajillion of these. But the overall point is, here's a character. They have a goal. The arc they're on should move them towards that goal. And either they get it and are a different person as a result of getting it, or they don't get it and they're a different person because they tried. Very, very rarely, and especially when you're a new writer, I would strongly dissuade you from trying to write a circular arc. That's an arc where the character who encounters the bulk of the story doesn't dramatically undergo change. The example I can think of off the top of my head would be The Big Lebowski. There's a pretty circular arc in The Big Lebowski for the dude, because he starts off and he goes through a lot and he learns a lot, but in the end he's still the dude. And the reason why that's a circular arc is because it's intended. We don't want that character to change because we're trying to highlight the strangeness or comedy or dudeness of the world. But by and large, when you are trying to engage an audience, especially in a debut novel, especially in fantasy or romance or thriller or one of the major genre types, a circular arc will kill you, because the expectation of your reader is that your characters are developing and growing and they're going to accomplish or not accomplish their goals. It's also vastly easier to write what's called a progressive arc. That's an arc that isn't circular, because we are so used to seeing media from practically birth where people move forward in arcs. Whether it's, see Tom run, see Jane sit. Those are arcs, all the way up through, Hamlet's to be or not to be speech. You want to make sure your character is moving forward in their arc towards their goal. And if they're not, there better be a good reason for it. And I say good, like substantial reason. There better be like a meaningful, oh shit, this is why they're not moving towards their goal. And it better matter to them, and it better have big consequences. That's how you develop arcs. Don't get bogged down in terminology. That's where too many writers, especially newer ones, poorly disciplined ones, frankly, ones that aren't going to finish their work or make it, they get bogged down in terminology. I'm writing a redemption arc. I'm writing a retributive arc. I'm writing a flash sideways arc. Great. You were able to look up a term on a website. You heard something in internet conversation. How delightful for you. Why are you doing that? Why are you going to use this kind of arc? What are you trying to say in your story? What is your theme? What is your plot? Why does that kind of arc fit the thing you're trying to do? Or are you just trying to sound impressive to other people because you want a pat on the head because you're feeling insecure about what you're writing? I'll let you chew on that part, but yeah, those are different arcs. Overall, you want to try to get your characters moving one way or the other. Good question. On more questions? Twitch? What's up? Anything? Else we will move to 10. We're going to 10. Ugh. Can you just feel the color and life drain out of my body with this question? 10. What's a good way to write a strong blurb? A blurb is the thing on the back of the book. What's a good way to write a strong one? Step 1, stop trying so goddamn hard. Blurbs are hard. They're just hard. They're just hard. A strong blurb is a blurb that encourages a person to read the book. To say, yes, I'm going to exchange money for this thing. A strong blurb is inherently variable relative to other things. If you take the blurb for the Penguin Classics version of Romeo and Juliet and look at how it's structured, and I'm saying that because it's in front of me over there on the table, and you look at how that's structured versus the blurb for Half Resurrection Blues from Daniel Jose Older, those are two very different blurbs written in two very different voices for two very different styles. Each are strong because a blurb should engage the ideal reader. So a good way to write a strong blurb is to, step 1, think about what your story is in summary. Now I know. Wait. Hold up. I can already hear some of you out there thinking that, oh shit, I'll just summarize things and use a lot of ellipses and question marks. No. In fact, I want you to sit in the corner. Sit in the corner and think about what you've done, because that is not what we're doing here. A strong blurb is engaging, and a strong blurb considers the book as a whole. So when you think about your story, whatever it might be, what things stand out to you? If you were the reader of this book, if this is the book you wrote because you would be somebody who would want to read it, what things are you looking for in this book? Don't name check proper noun characters. That's not going to matter. What are you looking for? I'm looking for, dynamic romance. I'm looking for incredible thrills. I'm looking for big, complicated, stupid medieval storytelling. I'm looking for bards. I'm looking for rabbit kings. I'm looking for nachos, whatever. Those big ticket items that stand out to you because you would want to read a book about them, those are the things you can go into your blurb. And you stitch those things together with a little bit of summary, because you do have to talk about what the book is or what's in the book to some degree, and you go from there. And you try and keep your paragraphs short. You try to keep your sentences short. And you don't constantly ask questions, because this is not the 5th grade book report in front of Mrs. Zandel's class. So it's not always going to be, can Sarah learn the ways of the pottery class? Can this happen? Will love bloom eternal in the kiln? I mean, you can keep asking questions and keep framing everything as questions, but it's just going to earmark you as somebody who's never done this before. And I want you to have a better experience than that. The key to a strong blurb is to find the engaging elements and promoting them within the paragraphs that you use to summarize the book as a whole. And then you just practice the ever-loving hell out of writing different blurbs in different orders with different emotional points and different things you bring up and in different styles and in different structures over and over and over and over again. And then you just practice it. But it's always going to come back to, here are the big major things I want you thinking about in order for you to say yes to buying this book. That's how you get better at writing a blurb. For more specifics on blurbs, I should probably do a whole night of them. Probably some Monday night I will do blurbs specifically. Not next Monday, but some Monday. I'll put it on the list. Yeah, but nobody likes their blurbs. It takes time and practice. You get better at it over time. but they're not easy, and they're not easy on purpose. On to question 11. I promised somebody I would answer this question. Is there any downside to creating an aesthetic or mood board? Let me just sweep over here to Zoom and see if anybody's laughing at me. No, nobody's laughing. Yeah. This question's great. I'm a big fan. It's delightful. Thanks so much for asking it. There is no downside to creating an aesthetic or mood board in terms of figuring out your aesthetic or your mood. The downside to it, the downside for it productively, is that you will spend more time fine-tuning this thing and less time writing, because you will have rationalized and convinced yourself that, well, if I get my aesthetic and mood board totally sorted out and I get that all perfect, then the writing will be easier. It's the same argument you make when it's like, well, if I make a playlist for this, I'll get into the zone faster. Or if I have the right software, it'll be easier to write the book. Or I have to go buy this pen so that I can write easier. Or I need to join the right group in order to do it. Or I need to do this. Or it's whatever you manufacture, whatever obstacle you want in place of the fear of doing it and failing. Right? Like, we're going to say, oh, no, I'll succeed. I just got to do this first. Or it'll be easier when I do that, because we're just not admitting instead that I'm really freaked out. I could screw this all up. This could be really bad. So instead, we find different things to occupy ourselves that seem tangential or adjacent to our goal, because they seem less threatening. Because if we mess up a mood board, it's just, oh, man, I messed up that mood board. It's not the same as messing up your manuscript. How dare you? I'm an awful author. Oh, this sucks. Then they're about the same, roughly. You screw up a mood board, you've wasted an afternoon. You screw up a chapter, you just go write another chapter. Maybe not write that second, but you just go back and write it again the next time. My big fear for everybody who's like, I need these things. I need the mood board. I need the playlist. I need the whatever, the scented author candles or whatever other shit people are hawking now. They convince themselves they need those things to the detriment of the work they could be doing instead. Yeah, you could totally spend 6 hours trying to figure out what 3 candles you should get and put on your table. And I'm not talking like I'm building an altar and expressing my faith in that. No. You don't get to hide behind that. I'm talking about how you are just literally not writing and instead finding something else to put your energy into. You could be writing that chapter, but you're over here screwing around thinking about candles because you want to be able to look slightly left of the monitor and go, oh, candles, that's nice. When an object or an activity that you swear up and down is supposed to help you write turns out to eat up the time where you could be writing, that's an activity that you need to do less of. So the downside in an aesthetic mood board is that you lose writing time to it because you're too busy trying to make it perfect instead of writing, which isn't going to be perfect, but it's messier and harder and more emotional and a little bit more vulnerable. And you're slightly in less control or more control, but it feels squishy and weird, and you don't really like this. I don't really like to talk about that, so I'll just instead make this aesthetic mood board. It's better. I don't want to deal with my feelings. Yep, that's a thing. So there's no downside, but don't get bogged down in it. Okay? Great question. And on to our last one. Oh, man. This one's good. This one's real good. And I like that it's gentle advice because it prevents me from like grabbing the rant bell and like super screeching. Gentle advice. Question 12. Is it possible that the majority of people in my critique group aren't very good writers? Yes and no. So let's come at this in a couple different ways. There's a level of arrogance baked into this question at like a deep atomic level. Because there's a suggestion somewhere in this question that they're terrible and I'm better than them. Now, maybe that's true. It is quantum mechanically possible that you are the best writer in your critique group. What's the percentage on that? I have no idea. No idea. But I know it's possible. But it is also possible, again, I don't know to what percentage, that you're all not very good writers and you're just least willing to see it. You could all be bad. You could all be great. You could be the best one. You could be second best or sixth best or who knows. But that's not important. If you're asking this question because you were dissatisfied with the material you were getting in your critique group, it's not because you're a way better writer and those guys suck. It's because this group is not doing for you the thing you have an expectation of critique groups to do. Now, maybe they're an actually very good critique group and they keep telling you that you're just bad at things. And you're in super denial as to whether or not that's true. Yeah, no, I'm fine. You guys are all wrong. I'm great. Well, that's a you thing, not a them thing. So what are you expecting from your critique group? This is a legit question to ask. This is a really important thing, especially if you're new to a critique group or you're trying to grow one or you want to be a good member in one. What is it that you're expecting them to do? Because if your answer to that is, tell me I'm good at stuff, and occasionally point out when I'm wrong, but mostly tell me I'm good at stuff, like you want to prefer the positive over the negative, that's not a critique group. And if you swing the other way and go, well, John, you must mean then the critique group's job is to like beat you into a pulp. No, that's not a critique group's job either. Get off the extremes, come towards the middle. The job of a critique group is to help everybody improve relative to where they are. So if you have a great deal of writing experience diversity, so some people are new, some people are, deep in, some people are, a lot of people are relatively within the same bracket. The goal is to lift everybody up through a combination of positive feedback as well as, pointing out the stuff that needs work and how to work on it relative to where they are. If somebody was brand new, let's say this is, like they've only been writing 6 weeks. I'm just making numbers up. If they've been writing 6 weeks, you would not drop on them the same advice you're going to give somebody who's been spinning their wheels on a second draft for 5 years. You'll freak them out. That's not the point. The point is to not use a blanket approach with every member of a critique group. Now, if all the members of this group are more or less in the same, like, we've all been writing 2 years, that's still not enough because they're individually in different spots. Because at 2 years, some people will be more comfortable writing in a certain way, or some people will be really good at this and not so good at that, and vice versa. So you still can't use quantity of time as your metric because it's not always equal. Because if we spent 2 years writing, but I spent every Saturday for 2 years writing, and somebody else spent every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for 2 years writing, we are going to be in two different places writing-wise, in terms of experience, in terms of, now I'm assuming some level of like actual production. They're not just like writing the same word over and over again. But we're going to end up in two different places even though we used the same amount of time. If you were dissatisfied with the stuff your critique group is giving you, you're dissatisfied with what they're giving you, you're dissatisfied with what you're getting, the first thing to do is ask yourself, what is it I'm wanting? And then look at what they're giving you and figure out the distance between the two. I want somebody to tell me my shit's great. Yeah, but if your stuff's not, they're not going to lie to you. Like, you want a group to lie to you? How is that going to help you succeed? I mean, maybe politically, but not productively. And if you're coming to this with this idea of like, well, I'm an expert, I've been doing this the longest, I know how to do all this, I'm looking for somebody highbrow who's been to school, who can use the following terms and has read all the fancy books. That's not going to help you. I've been to school. I own those fancy books. Very little of that shit helps me talk to regular writers who write a variety of things on the daily. So, step one, when you're dealing with a critique group, is asking yourself what it is you want. And then figure out if you're getting that. And if you're not getting it, what are you getting instead? And if you're getting stuff instead that you're just uncomfortable with, that you just don't like hearing, like they keep telling you, this is not a story, I don't know what this is, but this is not a story, and you're upset about it, that's legit. It can be frustrating and angering and upsetting to hear, bad things over and over. It can make you feel like a failure. It can make you feel rejected. It can make you feel unloved. It can make you feel loads of stuff. And it's unfortunate. But if you keep hearing the same advice over and over again, the same comments over and over again, maybe, just maybe, it's something to think about. I mean, yeah, still, you could still go, well, every time I talk to these 5 people, they tell me I'm terrible. But everybody else I talk to says I'm great. Well, then clearly the minority here with these 5 people are the problem because you have conflicting opinions otherwise. But if you've gone from critique group to critique group and you're always hearing the same thing like, this is not how you develop character, and you just keep jumping groups until you find somebody who's like, your characters are awesome, you're never going to be happy. Because the thing you should be doing instead is learning how to make better characters. So if you are really quick, now granted, I don't know the context behind this question, but if you are really, really quick to immediately label everybody else as the problem, well, the problem's you. Now, if you are let's just look at this on the face, right? Just for, we'll wrap it up this way. If you are genuinely in a group of writers who aren't helping you write better, because they're not very good, or because they waste their time, or because they're not serious, or because, I don't know, they their mothers dress them funny. I don't know, whatever kind of stuff there is. If you are genuinely in a spot where you are not getting helped, it is time to go find some people who will help. But understand that when you transition from that group to the new group, you might go from a place where you were not getting feedback to suddenly getting bombarded with feedback, to where you are suddenly getting like, oh my God, I'm drowning in stuff, because that's the level this new group operates at. This happens to me all the time. I will tell you this. So Discord, if you're a member of the Patreon, you've got access to the Discord. If you want to join the Discord, the Patreon's the best way to do that. Would you like a promo? Let's do a promo.
The Wednesday Writers Chat is powered by Patreon supporters. For more information, check out patreon.com/JohnHelpsYouCreate.
Or if you're in Twitch, you can use the command Patreon, or I think it's command Discord. It might be both. I think it's both. And it'll give you the link. It's patreon.com/JohnHelpsYouCreate. $2 a month. Keeps the lights on. Actually, it pays the electric bill and sometimes feeds the cat, which is nice. But the level of back and forth there is very different than something more casual, because this is literally my job. And the level of feedback I give is job level all the time. I don't turn it off. I don't really ramp it down unless you're like begging me to shitpost. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing 30 spinny triangles. One of these days, somebody's going to tell me like what it is that they are. But for now, I'm going to tell you I love you and thank you. So anyway, it is not uncommon for somebody new to come in and ask for some help, and then to get like deluged in advice, and then just to go like, I'm lost. I need a minute. You've blown my mind. There's so many, and I'm not doing this to like tell you how great I am. I'm just telling you that if you're going from a place that like didn't do that to suddenly a place that always does that, it can be very overwhelming. And you need to sort of prepare for that. Gird loins or whatever as you need to, and understand that as you move from group to group, you're going to get different experiences. So you should find a thing, a group that best benefits you and best helps you. And rather than look at, the groups behind you and go, well, they were all shitty. This is the good one. Rather than do that and try to like rank them in some kind of weird competition that no one likes being a part of, put the focus on what it is you're trying to do. I'm trying to publish. I'm trying to publish quickly. I'm trying to do this. I want to learn that. Whatever it is. Look for the tools that help you do that rather than shitting on everybody else. Figure out what's going to help you so that you can then turn around and be that for somebody else. Because it literally takes no less energy to be nice. It's usually a pretty straightforward thing to just not be an asshole. Usually. But by and large, yeah, you can contribute to the community you want to be a part of. If you don't want to change groups, you have a responsibility then to elevate your group to how you want it to be, and then people will either stick with that and model and follow example, or they'll bail, and then you'll just rebuild. But yes, to answer your question technically, it is possible that everybody else sucks and you're just the bestest. I mean, it's also possible that one day I will like peas, but that's neither here nor there. All right? Good question. All right, let's do one final look at Zoom. Questions, Zoom. I see you. You're just hanging out. Questions? Anybody? Anybody? Twitch? Questions? Anybody? Can I just point out real quick that I was super pumped to see this much activity in chat? Like, that's awesome. That makes me super happy. Thank you so much for doing that. I love that. I love that so much. Did I miss a Zoom? I feel like I missed a Zoom question. Hang on, let me scroll. Burp, burp, burp. Nope, not just that one. Okay. I'm full of good info, so I usually can't think of things left. All right, so here, look. It is not uncommon to come to one of these things and get like a ton of stuff and then think of a question later, and that's totally fine. If you think of one later, just let me know later. But I'm always happy to see you. So what do you say? What do you think we should do? You think we should get out of here before... Hang on. Hey, you guys. It's no longer 86 in here. It's 82. I'm melting less. No storm, no rain, no breeze. I'm slightly less gross. And I do need a shower. I feel like... What's that? Tacky? Like slightly sticky? Like it's disgusting. I know. But, anyway. Yeah. It's slightly cooler. Tomorrow, hopefully, it's better still. And they'll come finish renovating the office and wiring things. And everything will be nice and sweet and good. Whew. All right. What do you think? Think we should get out of here? Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns? Fist bumps? All right. Yeah, let's get out of here. Let's go to the outro. Yeah? I'm feeling outro-y. Let's go to the outro. Possibly. As soon as I remember where I put the outro button. Nope, that's not the outro button. Nope, that's not the outro button. One of these buttons does it, I swear. There it is. Outro! Wow. Hell of a night. That was great. Chat blew up multiple times. Made me very happy. Super excited. Thank you so much. I love question night. I love Q&A. It makes me super pleased. Thank you so much for letting me talk about the hashtag writing community and carousels and expensive editors and writer laziness and ideal readers and memoirs and story triangles and writing the book you'd want to read. I think that was awesome, Troy. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks for contributing. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being part of the greatest, well, the technically it's the 7th greatest writing community on Twitch if you're in the country of San Marino. That's a nice little piece of info as we climb up the ladder of writing streams. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being, ground floor ass kissers and ass kickers and kick-assers, and cool people. Thanks so much for being here. It means a lot. The next time, oh man, I'm melting here slowly. It's like I'm going to stick to this chair. It's going to be real gross. I can feel it. The next time we will communicate, I swear to you, like it'll be cool in here. The air conditioning will be running and I won't feel like I'm dying. The next time we will talk is September, let's see, it's September 13th, next Monday night. I don't know what the topic for our Monday night stream is. Ask me later this week. Find me on Twitter. I'll put it out there. Otherwise, the next time we will talk, I will see you on the 15th, which is next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, I love you. Don't give up. Keep making writing, keep creating art, keep feeding yourself, keep taking care of yourself and other people. Be the sort of good person you would want to tell other people to hang out with. And of course, please, oh please, don't forget how great butts are. And I will talk to you very, very soon.